Okay, continue with John Dewey's Moral Principles in Education. We're up to page 34. But lack of cultivation of the spirit is not all, of the social spirit. Positively individualistic motives and standards are inculcated. Okay, individualism. Some stimulus must be found to keep the child at his studies. At the best, this will be his affection for his teacher, together with a feeling that he is not violating school rules, and thus negatively, if not positively, is contributed to the good of the school. So by not negatively contributing to the good of the school. So that would be the school spirit inculcated in the model that Dewey is railing against, the recitation model, where you spend some time studying something and then you recite information from it to the classroom. I have nothing to say against these motives so far as they go, but they are inadequate. Okay, so we ought to have rules, and we ought to cultivate a love for teachers, right? So good teaching, exciting teaching, but those aren't enough. Not enough. Rules and good teaching. Interesting thing is, like, I saw online somebody who had taken a class from Dewey, and Dewey was not a very interesting teacher. So very boring. Read his lectures in a voice that was kind of hard to understand. Okay, continuing on. The relation between the piece of work to be done and the affection of the third person is external, not intrinsic. The relation between a piece of work to be done and the affection for a third person is external, not intrinsic. Okay, so in this model of individual learning, any other people are extrinsic to the act of learning. It is therefore liable to break down whenever the external conditions are changed. Moreover, the attachment to a particular person, while in a way social, may become so isolated and exclusive as to be selfish in quality. I think about like TEDx learning, right? TED learning. Everybody wants to be that individual, that particular person that everybody admires as a teacher. But it really is selfish, right? And those of us listening to it are selfish. Continue on. In any case, a child should gradually grow out of this this relatively external motive into an appreciation for its own sake. Interesting, this idea of appreciation for its own sake is very important in music education theory, because it goes into like appreciation of Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony for its own sake, right? Appreciation of Bach fugues for their own sake. Continuing on. Of the social value of what he has to do because of its larger relations to life, not pinned down to 2 or 3 persons. So life involves more than 2 people or 3 people. Life is social. So the old models of education don't work for Dewey. Continuing on. But unfortunately, the motive is not always at its relative best, but mixed with lower motives, which are distinctly egoistic. Continue on. I got that off of when he said it was selfish, right? Now he's using egoistic. 2 words mean the same thing. Fear is a motive which is almost sure to enter in, not necessarily physical fear, or fear of punishment, but fear of losing the approbation of others. I think that comes in Dewey in education as well. Approbation of others. I think it does, because the school is a factory, right? You still have the approbation of others when you don't fulfill expectations. Continue on. Or feel failure. Everybody has that. Nobody wants to fail. So extreme as to be morbid and paralyzing. We all know kids who are paralyzed from school, especially in this generation. What do they call this generation again? It's alphas? I don't know, I'll write that anyway. On the other side, emulation and rivalry enter in. Think about conducting departments, right? Emulation, you want to be just like Bernstein, right? And then rivalry, you want to be the best Bernstein-like conductor of all the Bernstein-like conductors, trying to make it in 1940s America as a conductor today. Just because all are doing the same work and are judged, either in recitation or examination, with no reference to grading and to promotion, not from the standpoint of the personal contribution, but from that of comparative success. This is all of our tests today. The feeling of superiority over others is unduly appealed to, while timid children are depressed. Depression is a major thing we expose our children to. Continue on. Children are judged with reference to their capacity to realize the same external standard. This is what would Dewey say about standardized testing? He wouldn't be for him, that's for sure. The weaker gradually lose their sense of power. Think about all the young adults today who went through the standardized testing model, even people who relatively successful got degrees and they don't read. When was the last time they read a book? It was school. How many times have they read outside of school? Not since they were children. So that gradual loss of sense of power, gradual loss of actual power too. Young people are not able to wrestle power from the system and from billionaires who've taken it. Continue on. And accept the position of continuous and persistent inferiority. I think that's built into the model. Teaching people inferiority, educating for inferiority. I think that's built into the model. We give kids grades that educates for inferiority. The effect upon both self-respect and respect for work need not be dwelt upon. The strong learn to glory, not in their strength, but in the fact that they are stronger. The child is prematurely launched into a region of individualistic competition, and this in a direction where competition is least applicable, namely in intellectual and artistic matters, whose law is cooperation and participation. How about that? Could I write my books without others? No, even the one I wrote by myself, right? Needed others. It just doesn't exist. Scholarly communities are a real thing. Next, perhaps, to the evils of passive absorption and of competition for external standing come perhaps some of those results which results from the external emphasis on preparation for a remote future. Always preparing futures. Always preparing kids for the future. Oh, you're not a full human being right now. You will be whenever you get your job after you've finished all the college and university and trade school we have lined up for you. I do not refer here to the waste of energy and vitality that accrues with children who live so largely in immediate present, are appealed to in the name of the dim and uncertain future, which means little or nothing to them. I have in mind rather the habitual procrastination that develops when the motive for work is future, not present. Future motive. So focusing on the future creates a habitual procrastination. And the false standards of judgment that are created when work is estimated, not on the basis of present need and present responsibility by reference to an external result, like passing an examination, getting higher scores on your PSSAs, getting promoted, entering high school, getting into college, etc. Who can reckon up the loss of moral power that arises from constant impression that nothing is worth doing in itself? Nothing in itself, right? So it's not worth studying music for itself, only to help you do one of these things. Or it's not worth reading poetry in itself, only to accomplish better grades on an examination, getting promoted, getting into high school or college. But only as preparation for something else, which in turn is only getting ready for some genuinely serious end beyond. So an ever-moving end. Moreover, as a rule, it will be found that remote success is an end which appeals most to those whom egotistic desire to get ahead of others is already too strong a motive. Remote success, so validates egotists. So our children who are naturally egotists, they do well, they do best under this system of remote success. Those in whom personal ambition is already so strong that it plants glowing pictures of future victories may be touched. Others of a more generous nature do not respond. So the generous children do not succeed in a situation. I cannot stop to paint the other side. I can only say that the introduction of every method that appeals to the child's active powers and his capacities in construction, production, creation, marks an opportunity to shift the center of ethical gravity from an absorption which is selfish to a service which is social. Manual training is more than manual. It is more than intellectual. It is in the hands of any good teacher. It lends itself easily and almost in a matter of course to development of social habits. So here we go. What does Dewey want? He wants manual training. Ever since the philosophy of Kant, it has been a commonplace of aesthetic theory that art is universal, that it is not a product of purely personal desire, appetite, or capable of merely individual appropriation, but has a value participated in by all who perceive it. Even in the schools where most conscious attention is paid to the moral consideration, the methods of study and recitation may be such to emphasize appreciation rather than power. Appreciation above power. So we had this music appreciation movement in the 1940s and 50s, right? I wonder how much it was built on these lines right here. An emotional readiness to assimilate the experience of others rather than enlightened and trained capacity to carry forward those values, which in others and past times made those experiences worth having. At all events, separation between instruction and character continues in our school in spite of efforts of individual teachers, as a result of the divorce between learning and doing. The attempt to attach genuine moral effectiveness to the mere process of learning and to the habits which go along with learning can result only in a training infected with a formality, arbitrariness, and an undue emphasis upon failure to conform. That there is as much accomplished as there is shows the possibilities involved in methods of school activity which afford the opportunity for reciprocity, cooperation, and positive personal achievement. So reciprocity, cooperation, positive personal achievement would be Dewey's goals for education. I actually like the three words. So if we think about reciprocity, it's part of American Indian philosophy and probably other indigenous philosophical modes as well. I think I've seen it in somebody's presentation on indigenous Australian folk as well, but I'm not sure. But reciprocity, right? That means we have this relationship going back and forth where I want to give you things and I want to receive things from you, and back and forth every day. Then cooperation, I don't know you as well, but we're going to work together. We're going to get this done. And then positive personal achievement. So those achievements which don't necessarily lead to egotism, selfishness. Interesting stuff. Have a blessed day.